Today's episode is all about how to master your talk. Every time we speak, we can either make a good, neutral, or a negative impact on the people in front of us. Spending over 2 decades coaching employees, I have seen a direct correlation between the way how an employee communicates and makes presentations to the level of advancement they will have in the company. We are all in the people business, and people need to know the tools and tricks on how to communicate effectively with other people. I have the honor to present you an amazing guest from Canada. His name is Brenden Kumarasamy, who is the founder of Master Talk, where he helps us master the art of public speaking and communication. Brenden has coached many business people on how to give outstanding presentations. He then quickly realized that public speaking was not always easy to master. There are many factors that make people afraid to get on stage and present confidently. Because of this, he created a channel to help you master even the slightest details of your pitch so that you can gain the confidence to deliver the best presentations you have ever dreamed of. Today, we're going to discuss the importance of presentation and communication skills as an employee, a part-time or a full-time project manager, a Lean Six Sigma practitioner, or if you work in accounting, sales, operations, audit, IT, or any other role in the corporate world, then you will profit from this episode. I am excited to introduce you to this amazing guest, Brenden, who, by the way, had a bit of a cold and a congested nose on the day of our conversation. Nevertheless, I was delighted that he agreed to proceed with the recording and provide all of you with value. Hi, Brenden, and welcome to the First Waves podcast. It's so great to have you here.
It's great to be here, Juan. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for your time. And could you tell us your story and describe how did you get to find your passion and to create Master Talk?
More than happy to. So for me, the journey started in college, Juan. I went to business school and I studied in accounting, funny enough. So I was a numbers guy. I thought that's what I was going to do with my life. But then in that journey, I started competing in case competitions. Think of it like professional sports, but for nerds. So while other guys my age are playing rugby or basketball or baseball, I wasn't one of those guys. I did presentations competitively. That's how I learned how to speak. But then as I got older, I started coaching all the other students in college, not because I was great at coaching or anything, but because they didn't have anyone better and I wanted them to win competitions. So I accidentally developed a talent on how to teach other people how to speak. And that's what led to the YouTube channel Master Talk initially. Because my thought was, everything I'm teaching them isn't really available for free on the internet. So I start making videos on YouTube, and then a few years later, it turns into something I never could have imagined.
Wow, amazing. It just feels like if you're building a muscle, and you just got to do something over and over again to be better at it. And it just sounds like that's what you're saying right now. You just had to speak and practice it so many times until you became an expert. And that's just something that you cannot do if you just learn the skills, you learn the tools, and you say, hey, now I know the tools, but if you haven't applied it, you're just not going to be good at speaking. Yeah? So I think that's one of the things that you always preach is like, you got to do it over and over again. Just like you got to go to the gym and do it over and over again, those exercises. Otherwise, it's not going to grow. Yeah.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Could you tell us why is it so important for an employee to be able to properly present and communicate in a corporate world? How can they use that as a tool to progress?
Absolutely, Juan. You know what I always tell people getting started is if your goal is to one day be a manager, if your goal is to be in management someday, you need to realize that communication plays an essential role at that level. So let's say, for example, I use tech as an example. Let's say you start as an engineer, as a coder. So you're coding and you're telling yourself, well, I'm getting paid a lot of money to code. I don't have to manage people. I don't have to even talk to people that much. But what we fail to realize is when you become an engineering manager, you're not coding that much. You're just managing people who code. So the skill set required to be successful at the manager level is completely different than the role you got hired to do in the first place when you get started in your career. And that's true with a bunch of different disciplines. Accounting is the same thing. When you become a manager, you're kind of in the weeds with the tax returns, but you're not doing the groundwork. You're just reviewing at the end to make sure that it's good. So most of your time is really empowering your team to do it, giving them feedback, and making them better versions of themselves. So for me, I describe communication as the competitive advantage that you'd rather learn earlier in your career than later because you have a lot more time for it now.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, especially when I think back in the corporate world, there were a lot of people who are really good at what they were doing in the job. Yeah, let's say in operational work, or as you said, like perhaps coding or anything else. And as they were so good at it that they say, hey, this is the best person doing this job. If the current manager goes somewhere else or leaves the company, then let's just take the best person on the team and put him there in the management position or in the team leader position. But then this person is still the best at coding, but never had the chance to properly communicate or to practice the way how they speak with other managers or practice the way how they speak with employees. And that's where the challenge comes. And that's where I just could link it to what you just mentioned right now, which is so true, because so many times I've seen that scenario where the best employee of the team becomes team leader. And then after that, it's like, oh, how do I now cope with this? Yeah. What have you seen is the most common challenge that employees have when communicating and presenting?
I would say, Juan, for me, it really goes back to the consistency gym analogy, which is, if you're not going to the gym to work on your fitness, of course you're not going to get better. It's the same thing with communication. Whether you went to engineering school, whether you went to business school, communication is talked about, but it's not really emphasized. Like, it's talked about as a subject. You might have taken a communication class in school, but you're not really communicating yourself. You're not practicing that muscle. And that's where the challenge is primarily. You gotta build that muscle. You gotta work on it so that you build up the time. So for me, going back to that challenge, all you have to do to get better is book 15 minutes in your calendar every single week. It's just the problem with a lot of entry-level employees is they don't really take the time, especially at a moment in their career where they have the time. Like, you're not working 90 hours a week. If you're getting started, you're new to the company, they're not going to work you too hard at the beginning. So what you want to do is you really want to book that 15 minutes every week to just do the random word exercise, which is an exercise we teach where you take a word like box or tissue box or phone or camera and you create 60-second presentations. Just do that consistently, and what you practice consistently is what you get results consistently onto.
That's really, really powerful. If you really have that discipline to book it in your calendar, and I think that's the important part, book it in the calendar. If you don't book it, it's not going to be real. You're not going to just do it because you're not going to remember about it. So once you have it in your calendar, it's already, I would say, almost 50% real. And once you execute it, when you see that little notification coming, it's like, now it's time that you do this exercise, then hopefully they will do it. Yeah. So I'm just thinking about that as an analogy to driving a car. For example, at the beginning, if you're doing this exercise, it's going to be really hard because you're just like pushing yourself a little bit outside of the comfort zone. I would say you're probably not going to feel that happy because one just wants to keep on doing what you're doing in that job in that day. But if you do it regularly, and let's say it's already 3, 4, 5 months that have gone by and we're still doing that exercise that you just told us today, right now, then they're going to feel, hopefully at that point of time, more comfortable. Just like when you're driving a car and you're starting off, you're just like always sweating, you're nervous, you're like looking at every single corner 10 times before you do the cross. But then later, 6 months later, you're just like driving with one hand, eating the burger with the other hand, and you're like all relaxed. Yeah. So it's probably similar like speaking, when you just practice. And I just love that exercise that you said, that you just take any word which around you from some object that you see and you just talk about it. I'm going to try that.
Absolutely.
What is your definition of an employee who is good at communication and presentation, so that whoever's listening to this podcast can say, okay, I'm trying to put a picture in my head. What is the ideal vision of somebody who does this good?
Yeah, I would say for me, Juan, what stands out the most is how we structure responses to executives. So my advice always to employees is to think like an executive on day one. What does that mean? That means even if you don't want to be one, you have to realize you're talking to them every single day. Let me give you a simple example of what I mean. Let's say you're in a Scrum meeting or just a status update, and your manager comes up to us and says, hey, Brenden, what's the update on the meeting? Like, what have you been working on this week? Employees are horrible at answering this question. They'll answer with, yeah, so I talked to IT and this happened, and I talked to operation, this happened. So what they're not considering is that the executive does not have the same amount of time as the employee does, because there's 10 other meetings they should be in. So they only have 5 minutes. So what they're really looking for is, what are the three main ideas? Do you need my support with anything? And is there anything that's a red flag that you want to bring up? That's it.
Yeah. And if I need something to decide, tell me.
Yeah, exactly. So instead of going, I ate some food this morning, you go to, hey, Juan, it's great to see you. 3 items like we discussed. Number 1, number 2, number 3. Here's why these 3 points matter to you. Here are some action items I need you to take. And is there anything else that you want me to prioritize for next week's meeting? So I'm talking, just based on your expression. Even if I'm an employee, I'm talking like an executive. So this does 2 things. One is, if you want to be an executive, they start to see you as their friends. So when you get promoted, or when you're in a promotion talks, it's not even a conversation. It's, oh yeah, wasn't Brenden already an executive? Wasn't Juan already an executive? Of course, yeah, just give him more money and have him join leadership. Or the second thing that happens, if your goal is not to be an executive, is that you become reliable. Oh, okay, whenever I'm talking to Juan, whenever I'm talking to Brenden, whenever I'm talking to Julia, I have so many less problems, less headaches. If something bad happens to the economy and I need to cut off my staff, I'll cut people out of the company if I need to, but there's no way I'm giving up on Juan, because he's worth 10 employees, because I don't have to ask him to keep repeating himself. So you become more indispensable to the organization. Seth Godin calls this the linchpin. So the linchpin is somebody who is so strong in multiple areas of life that the company crumbles without them. And if you're that person, you'll never have any issues with getting a job.
Wow. That shows again what's the power of master talk, of mastering the way how you communicate. And it really changes your life. It changes your career. It changes your outcome and visions, what you can achieve in life, and just by optimizing the way you speak. Amazing. That's why what you provide as a service is so valuable. What are the things that you can recommend a person who is nervous and intimidated to make their next presentation? Maybe they have to go on stage, or maybe they have to speak with their manager, or just have a short presentation in their team. How do you manage to keep calm? Yeah, because many of them, if it's the first time, they're just like, oh, they can barely breathe. They can feel their heart in their head. And have you any techniques that could just calm them down and just be okay with it?
Absolutely. You know, for me, the main idea is, other coaches might say breathe a little more, count to 5, do some deep breathing, power pose. I'm not a big believer in that stuff, because I don't think that gets consistent results for people, from my experience. So what's the advice? And you might not like to hear it. Do what's harder outside of the boardroom so that the boardroom is a joke. Do what's harder outside of the boardroom so that the boardroom becomes a joke. Employee comes up to me and says, oh my God, I'm really worried about my manager. I go, why? Oh, because I have to do a feedback call with them. Great, let's simulate one now, and I'll be the worst manager you ever had in your life. So I'll sit there for 45 minutes and go, this is terrible, this is horrible. I'll keep cutting them off. And then they'll try and maintain composure. But then when they go into the real meeting, they go, oh, the manager is really nice to me. This is not that bad. Brenden was way worse than the manager. Same thing with the random word exercise. Why is it so effective, picking a random word? Because that never happens in corporate. You don't have to talk about avocado toast for 60 seconds. You don't have to talk about, a Spanish food for 60 seconds. So when you go into corporate, you know what you're talking about. It's your topic. It's your job. So it becomes a lot easier for you to deal with those situations because you've done the random word exercise so many times.
Excellent. That's really good advice. I think that's a good connection to maybe explaining what is it that you offer in your business that you put together, which is called Master Talk, which is so powerful. And I really enjoy watching all those videos that you create for us. Could you tell us more about it? What are your services?
So the service is 2 parts. So the first part of Master Talk is the media company. And I'm glad that you're enjoying the video. So luckily things are working, which is, my goal with Master Talk at the end of the day is, how do we create free communication resources for the whole world? I want everybody to have access to this information for free. That's why my mission is, I think the next Elon Musk is a 7-year-old girl who can't afford a coach like me. That's really the focus. So how do we make everyone who's listened to this podcast have access to those resources? That's one. It's all on YouTube. It's all free. The second part of Master Talk is how do I fund for that? Because obviously I spend a lot of money making videos, so I got to eat, and I love it too, is coaching. I coach a lot of executives primarily on how to communicate ideas. So I'd say most people at the employee level I'm coaching are usually in the technology space because their base salary is a lot higher than other fields, so they can afford coaching. But here's what I'll say. If you're in any field outside of, let's say, finance and technology or management consulting, if you're outside of those three fields, I would say keep watching these videos, keep learning, and then as you grow in your career, that's when you want to look at somebody like me to help accelerate your success.
Perfect. So that means that those employees who cannot afford you yet, perhaps at that point of time, but they are already learning all these nice tools and techniques from your side. And at some point of time, as they're getting better at communicating and presenting, they will become a manager and then they will be your future clients. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, sounds really nice. I like that development. And one of the things that is quite curious, because I have seen that quite often with employees in a corporate world, and I was also probably part of that at the beginning of my career, it was the difficulty of saying no. At the beginning, I just didn't want to disappoint my manager, and I was starting off at a company, and they say, hey, could you do this? Could you do that? I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And then you're trying to do that project, and then they put you another project on top, and you say, yeah, sure. And is your advice for employees who are starting off to say to their manager no without disappointing their manager?
So the way that I see it, which you might not like again, is I think for the first 6 months, if you're getting started, you should say yes to everything. Because you're not sure what you want in your career yet, but don't see it as change your mindset around it from, oh my God, this is so much work, to, wow, I get to experience 10 different opportunities within the company so that I know what to focus on later in my career. You're still working hard, but your mindset around it, your energy around it changed. So when I was at IBM, I was there for 2.5 years before I went full-time on the business. I said yes to every opportunity. I didn't say no because I wanted to meet as many executives as possible. But of course, after 6 to 9 months, you have a pretty good idea of what you want now. Now you're like, you know what? These 4 managers suck, but that manager's really cool. How do I spend 80% of my time with that person? So then with that manager, they kind of give you a roadmap on what the future looks like for you to take their job eventually or to work under them. And then you focus your energy on getting that result because you know it drives value for the company. So then anything outside of that sphere, that's when it's important for you to not say no, but you say something like, hey, I really appreciate you thinking about me. Just based on the goals that I have in the company, I really want to focus on working with Juan so I can advance in this specific role. But I'm more than happy to see if anyone else can help you with that. Is that okay? So I'm still helping you, but I'm saying yes, but I'm also saying no.
Yeah.
So that way people go, oh, versus going, no, I don't have time for it. But like, hey, thanks for considering me for this. Let me see if there's anyone else who could help you who are more aligned to doing that to get their goals.
Perfect. I got scared at the beginning when you said say yes to everything, but then now it just totally makes sense because once you say yes to many things at the beginning, you can start learning about yourself as an employee. You can also learn about, as you said, all the colleagues in the company, but also what are the things that you do not like. Yeah, so you can start sorting out the things. You say, okay, I'm never going to do that again. I'm not going to do business with that area. But then at least you start identifying, maybe now I know what direction I like to go, and that is going to be my future path within the company. And if you wouldn't have said yes to all those things at the beginning, you still wouldn't know maybe after 2-3 years because you only stuck on one area.
Correct. And I'll give you a specific example in corporate because I can mention it since I don't work there anymore. That's what happened with me. I did business development at IBM and I also did technology implementations. And I realized really quickly I loved the BD side, doing RFPs, giving presentations, but I hated the technology implementation side. But I needed to do that work to get promoted. So basically, if I had never started Master Talk, I would have went back to the company and said, hey, look, guys, there's 2 options. Either change my department to change management or I'm going to work for Deloitte, right? Yeah. Or I was just going to work for a different firm. But because I said yes to everything for 2.5 years, I have the reputation now to say that because all of my executives want to keep me, right? But you don't have to say yes for 2.5 years because I'm extreme. But I'm saying if you don't say yes to a couple of things at the beginning, you don't have buy-in from the company, right? So that's what's important for you to fortify your career.
Okay. Sounds really, really good. I have 2 more questions. Second last one is, Because I'm thinking, what are the difficult situations that usually employees have throughout the year when they speak with their manager? And one of them is, let's say we have a person who has done very good performance or overachieved what they had to achieve in their goals. And the employee is thinking already the last couple of years have the same salary. But they're really scared to speak to their manager about, could you consider maybe the next salary raise if I could be potentially, What would you recommend to this employee? How would they communicate that to their manager so that the manager doesn't think like, okay, what's this person I want? And they again want some money because it's always somehow the same topic at the end of the year. But how do you come through so that it's in a positive light so that it doesn't come out so, I would say, cheesy?
So there's two approaches you can take. I like the first one better than the second, but to each their own. So the first part of the strategy is you got to interview all the time. I'm a big believer in the idea that even if you love your job, even if you love the position that you're in, anything can happen. I've seen so many talented people gotten laid off in the last year. So many talented people. And a lot of them are my clients, right? They're investing in themselves, they're taking their game to the next level, and they got laid off. So that happens. So it's important for you to interview for other firms, not necessarily to work for them, but just to understand what your market value is. Let's say you're making 70 grand a year and another firm, another competitor offers you 80. You could see how far you could push this negotiation. You could say something like, hey, I want 100, just to see what they say. And if they go, no, we'll give you 95. If you say yes, then your worth is 95, you're getting paid 70 right now. So then what you do is you go back to your original employer, but you don't threaten them. That is not the point. Okay, so you go to your original employer and you say, hey, look, I really want to stay here. I don't want to work for this company. I just do this just to know what my market value is worth. So I'd love to have a conversation with you. What are some of the new responsibilities I can take on within the company so I can merit this type of salary? Because I'm not looking to jump ship. I'm not looking to leave. I love this company. I just want to make sure that I'm fairly paid for the responsibilities I'm delivering. What is your opinion on this? And so you make it an open-ended conversation. What do you think about this one? How do you think I can get to this level? So this is always appreciated by bosses. Because most of the times when these conversations happen, they go, I'm getting paid 95K, match me tomorrow or I'm gone. That's how it usually goes. But if you approach it from, hey, I'm just doing this interview to see how much other people are willing to pay for this expertise. And I would just want to say, what can we do? Because you're my favorite boss in the world. I don't see myself working for anyone else. So is there anything that you can do to help us figure this out? You could take a week. Or you could take a month. It's fine. I'm not going anywhere. I just want your opinion on this. People will always run the extra mile for you. They'll go, wow, this Brenden guy's really loyal. I'm going to go out of my way to help that person. Yeah. So that's really the key.
Wow, that's really good. Because I've seen so many interviews with employees who just really do it the wrong way. Yeah, they just do it more like the threatening way. They're saying, look, if I don't get this, then I'll just going to go to that other company. And the manager's like, hey, if you're thinking anyway going to the other company, then just go to the other company. You don't like to feel that somebody's threatening you. And that's why as an employee, you really have to be very mindful about how you give that communication over to your manager. Yeah, and I like the way how you just explained that, and it totally makes sense. So we are already coming to the end of this podcast. So thank you so much for that great advice. And where can the listeners find you?
For sure, Juan. Great to be on the show. Thanks for having me. So 2 ways to keep in touch. The first one is the YouTube channel. Just go to Master Talk in one word. You'll have access to hundreds of free videos on how to communicate ideas effectively. And the second way to keep in touch is to attend one of my free communication workshops. I do a free one online over Zoom that everybody's invited to. You could be a 5-year-old kid, you could be an executive, everyone can come to that training. And it gives you an opportunity to see how I speak on a workshop setting. You'll learn so much more, and it's absolutely free. So if you want to join that, go to rockstarcommunicator.com and just register for the next one.
Excellent. I've been checking your YouTube, and I can just say to the listeners, I encourage you to look in there because it's really good stuff. You got very exciting topics, and I'm sure we will learn a lot from what you have to say. So thank you so much. I will be putting all of what you just mentioned into the show notes. And well, Brenden, it was fantastic having you here. Thank you so much.
Likewise, Juan. Such a treat.
Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Brenden. In the show notes, you will find all the links on where to find and contact him. Before you listen or do anything else right now, I encourage you to pause for a moment, reflect on what was discussed, and choose at least one action point out of this episode and try it out. Feel free to let me know how it went through any of my social media channels or email. These links you will also find in the show notes. Your feedback is important to my team and me, so we can continuously improve the value we deliver, as we want to give you the most from each episode. Please rate, subscribe, and send in your comments and share with those who you think could profit from this episode. It's very much appreciated, and I'm grateful for your messages. I am also a work in progress, and I strive to do things better every day. This podcast is sponsored by Wave Business Excellence Footprint, where we believe that investing in yourself is the best investment you can make. On the website www.wave-bef.com, you will find a total of 22 courses. 7 of those are designed for managers, and 15 courses are designed for employees who strive to become the leaders of tomorrow. If you do not have a Lean Six Sigma certification, then you will find an outstanding certification program with Wave. In case you already have a certification, then we have other courses that will further enhance your skills. On the website, take a look under the tab called Courses for Employees to see what course resonates with you. All of these courses are designed to take you to the next career development level. Thank you, stay tuned, and see you in the next episode.